Hi, this is Lucy Roberts with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Alliance Real Estate. Thank you for joining us today. I wanted to introduce to you Richard Veit, an estate attorney, to join us and to help me educate you as a consumer on what estate planning is. Thank you, Richard, for joining us.
Thank you, Lucy, for giving me the opportunity to share this valuable information with you and your clients, families, and friends. I look forward to our discussion today.
Great, let's get started. The first thing I want to ask you, when we talk about estate planning, what is it?
The estate is whatever you own, everything you have. It can be real estate, it can be your stocks, your bank accounts, whatever. And so estate planning is planning what happens to that estate upon your death. And it includes dealing with some other issues, but mostly it's just about how to go about making sure what you've worked hard to get gets to those people who you want to get it.
Why is it important to have an estate plan? And what are the reasons for having an estate plan?
Well, that can be wrapped up in, for some people, a desire to avoid probate and the costliness of probate. But most importantly, it's just to make sure that whatever you have goes to the people you want to in the easiest, cheapest, smoothest way.
Estate planning is essentially very easy. What documents do I need to bring to you? Then, once you've had a chance to review those documents, what is it that they're going to walk away with?
First, start with the documents that you need to bring. Be aware of all the assets that you own, and that would be your retirement accounts, your bank accounts, your vehicles, and if you own real estate, your house, which would be a deed. You would also want to explore if any of those assets you have already designated a beneficiary. Okay. So you might need to check with your bank if you've opened up a bank account, if somebody's named a payable on death. Now, what the attorney will be preparing for you is just going to depend upon how complicated your financial situation is, and there are different options. That would all depend on the individuals, but you could expect always to have a will. For certain folks, a trust would be very advantageous. If they have real estate, you could expect a beneficiary deed.
Will, trust, beneficiary deed?
Also, often we'll do a power of attorney.
Power of attorney.
And any of those individuals, which most people have concerns regarding health decisions, you can expect an advanced health care directive.
Right, like a medical power of attorney.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So that was a great answer, Richard. So you said some of the documents they will walk away with is either a will, a trust, a beneficiary deed, a power of attorney, or a medical power of attorney. So let's start with the first one. What is a will?
A will is a document that indicates what you want to happen to your estate upon your death. A lot of people, that's the only estate document they have, but it's very, very important. Everybody needs to have a will no matter what other documents they have, because the will is the only document that can absolutely cover every possibility regarding your estate.
Richard, your answer for what is a will sounded like to me that would have been the answer for what is a trust. So can you help me differentiate between the two?
Absolutely. The trust is something that is creating a legal entity right now. A will is not effective until death. The trust is created right now. If you think of the concept of me, myself, and I, a trust is basically cloning yourself and creating an entity called the trust, and it can do such like any other legal entity. It can own property, and it's an important issue of a trust. It's often a very effective estate planning tool, but it does not replace a will. A lot of folks who want a trust say, I don't need a will. No, you need both if you want a trust.
Richard, another term you used was beneficiary deed. Can you explain to me what that is and why we need it?
It's a document that designates a beneficiary of your real estate, and it's only effective upon your death. For instance, that means that it has no effect on your title until you pass away, or if you have two or more people, until both pass away. It means you can refinance your house, you can sell your house, you can transfer your house, and it has no effect. The law that actually created it came around 1989, a few years after I actually started practicing law. But it's an excellent, simple way to make sure the people you want get your house upon your death.
So Richard, let's talk about power of attorney, a medical power of attorney, and then a healthcare directive. If you can tell us the differences between those three.
Sure, I'd love to explain that. Let's first start with the word attorney. The word attorney means someone who acts on somebody else's behalf. I might be called a lawyer. I'm also an attorney at law. I act on people's behalf as an attorney. But when we're talking about a power of attorney, we're talking about an attorney in fact, somebody you designate to act on your behalf. Generally speaking, they have a term called general durable power of attorney. It's for somebody who could act on your behalf when you're unable to regarding financial decisions. You can also have a special power of attorney regarding medical decisions. Now here in Missouri, we passed a law in 1991 that sets forth advanced directives, and it's basically a two-part document that includes a power of attorney which designates somebody to carry out your medical decisions when you're unable to do that yourself.
When you're referring to a trust, I've heard two terms used, either a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust. Can you explain the difference between the two?
Well, a revocable trust can be changed, and that's what most folks will do. They may, as their life changes, they may have different beneficiaries, they might be different successor trustees, so they're going to want to change that. Now, an irrevocable trust is often used as a tax planning method to get some tax benefits. They usually involve charities, certain assets. That's something you probably would discuss with your accountant and or your financial advisor. However, it's important to know that if you have a revocable trust, upon your death it becomes irrevocable, meaning that other people can't change what you plan to do with your assets upon your death.
When we're talking about a trust, one of the very first things that somebody's going to have to consider is who's going to be the trustee. How do we select that trustee?
Well, the initial selection is real easy because the initial selection of the trust is you, yourself, or if you're married, you and your spouse are trustees. So you're really talking about the successor trustee, and I know that's what you meant. And that would often be a family member, somebody, one of the beneficiaries. You have to trust them. That's why they call them trustees. However, you can also benefit, especially if you have a more complex distribution, of corporate trustees. There are organizations that are professional that handle this, that can do that. So you can research that also. But it's really basically, who do you trust?
There you go. So the next thing that I want to talk to you about is funding a trust. Funding a trust is very important. And people go, what are you talking about funding a trust? I went to the attorney and we put all the trust documents together and I thought that was it. No, that's not it. The next part is very, very important. You have to fund your trust. How do you fund your trust? So you have to go to your banks. You have to be able to get your accounts in the name of the trust. And especially with real estate, this is very, very important. You will have a deed, and the deed is going to remove it from your personal name into the name of the trust, and that deed has to be recorded. That is how you fund a trust. Now, that was kind of my simple answer to it, but Richard, if you can fill in the blanks there, I really appreciate it.
Well, I think you've highlighted a big problem, and some of this is from people who just try to do it themselves. Because when you're creating a trust, you're creating this entity, this box, and if you don't put anything in it, it has no effect.
Kind of like a little treasure box.
Yeah, it has no effect. That's where more in-depth discussions with a professional and attorney, also financial advisors are sometimes helpful in doing this. But you have to put your assets in the trust or you've just wasted your time, whether you tried what we call Swiss cheese trust with holes or whatever that you drew up yourself, or whether you even had a professional. So it's important that when you're discussing with your attorney, that's why you need to know what all your assets are, especially if you're preparing a trust, is to make sure that the trust has ownership of those assets. And you are right on point on this issue, Lucy, and it is one of the common mistakes.
It is, and I see it all the time. So it's really important. Just remember, every asset that you own, whether it's a checking account, savings account, IRAs, your real estate, your cars, any asset that you own, when you create a trust, it is so very, very important to do your checklist and make sure that everything is funded. And of course, Richard can walk you through it and actually help you with the funding part. Richard, when creating an estate plan, obviously we want to do everything correct. We don't want to have any mistakes. But however, what are some mistakes that do happen in estate planning?
Well, you've already hit upon one, not funding the trust. That's a big one. And of course, the obvious one is not doing it. People just are intimidated by the process. They think it's going to be too costly.
They just don't get started.
They just keep putting it off. But if you do prepare an estate plan, some of the problems revolve around when people do it themselves. They forget to get the documents properly signed. There has to be certain language in them. There has to be witnesses have to be notarized. That's all something that an attorney knows how to do and make sure it's being done. And then as much as we like to deal with different contingencies when we help people put together an estate plan, we ask them to think about all these different possibilities. When those life changes happen, maybe the prediction of how they would handle it is not the same. They want to change things. Now they have grandchildren, maybe they want the grandchildren to share directly in the estate. So whenever you have a life-changing event, you need to look over your estate plan and update it. And then of course, you have to keep all your documents in a safe, secure place, because often certain documents, only the original counts. In particular, I think of a will, only an original will counts, so you need to keep that in a safe deposit box or just somewhere secure. And if you lose it, you probably need to redo it.
Very good. All right, so let's recap that real quick. So common mistakes we want to avoid. First of all, get started. Second of all, fund your trust, make sure it's funded. Third of all, we want to make sure we hire a professional estate attorney to make sure that the documents are correct and that they're signed, notarized, and of course, you want to keep your originals in a safe place.
That's it.
Good recap. If somebody just does not get started, what happens?
Well, of course, when they pass away, if they own a property and there's no beneficiaries, you're going to have a probate. That, for most people, is something that they want to avoid. It's costly, there are filing fees, it's public. The attorneys take a percentage of the estate, it's set by statute. All attorneys are going to do that. It's just something that could be avoided by planning ahead. That's why I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to explain all this, and I would just suggest contact me at 636-916-4357. Mention Lucy to me. I won't charge for initial consultation.
Let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. As you can see, I am so very passionate about estate planning. I really feel like it's very important. That's why I wanted to bring you this information to you today so you can start thinking and starting planting the seeds. Every buyer and seller that I work with, I plant this seed with estate planning because I see how hard each and every one of you work every day. And we're buying houses, we're selling houses, and I want to make sure that you keep in mind, top of mind, that obviously the most expensive asset most likely that you're purchasing, which is your house, your home, where you're raising your families, that it's protected. So I just wanted to tell you that thank you so much for your business, and I appreciate you, and thanks for tuning in. Lucy Roberts with Berkshire Hathaway.